Hello, friends. On this glorious day in drink history, we are revisiting a category of strong drink that brings me great inspiration and liquid happiness. Calvados. If you have never enjoyed a world-class Calvados, then your drinking experience is missing something truly spectacular. I've said it before and I'll say it again, there is perhaps no category of spirit that matures with the complexity and magic of Calvados. And as such, I couldn't be more excited to be chatting with Guillaume Drouin of C.Drouin Calvados. Mr. Drouin is carrying on his family's tradition of Calvados production, and he currently oversees one of the world's most extensive cellars of vintage Calvados. And for this interview, I traveled all the way to Normandy, France, to the C.Drouin estate, where we settled into the living room of the estate's 17th century manor house for some truly inspired conversation. Let's do this. This episode of the Educational Drinking Show is sponsored by Junipero Gin, which is the original American craft gin going back to 1996 and the pioneering work of Fritz Maytag, which also makes it the gin of San Francisco. At 98.6 proof, it's a bit stronger than most gins and perfect in your favorite gin cocktail. Good stuff. And with that, it's my great pleasure to share with you my interview with the esteemed Calvados producer, Guillaume Drouin. Okay, I really like Calvados, like a lot. Do you know the last drink that I had as a single man? Spoiler alert, it was Calvados.
That's a good choice.
Yes. So I got married last year, no, the year before, 2 years ago, I think. Time flies when you're having fun. Anyways, I'm at my wedding. Right before the ceremony, my groomsmen, several of which are here, we all gathered together and had a 1958 C.Drouin Calvados.
Good choice.
Yes, and it was amazing. It was so good. And it's a very happy memory for me. So it's kind of a big deal that I get to be here and talk to you about the amazingness of Calvados. What's your earliest memory of Calvados?
It's not my memory, but I was told about it.
Really?
My father loved to tell this story. But when I was 3 years old, he catch me once in front of the still, tasting the Calvados. He remembers I said it was good.
Yeah?
I don't remember it.
Yeah, no?
Maybe I had too much. I don't
Probably.
know.
Yeah, right?
So this is the oldest recorded tracks of me with Calvados.
Yeah.
But then when I remember myself as more like when I was 15, 15 or 16, I started to do some visits here for the visitors, and so I was giving explanations about the production, and I had to, of course, describe the Calvados. But at 15, you're still a bit young to do that well. But so I used to do most of it by just smelling.
Okay.
And it's something I kept, like still nowadays when I do my blends. Most of the work will be done mainly with the nose. At first, for me, the mouth is just a confirmation.
Got it.
Because when you know your spirits well enough, the nose tells you what you have in the glass.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And for folks that are new to the category, where are we right now?
Well, right now we are in the Pays d'Auge region. We're in Normandy, 2 hours from Paris, northwest, 10 minutes from the sea. Trouville and Deauville is 10 kilometers from here. And so the Pays d'Auge is a very famous region for producing Calvados. The first appellation for Calvados was created in 1942, Calvados Pays d'Auge. And so we are in the historical region for Calvados, and that's important because Normandy and Calvados are just completely linked together. Calvados is really deeply rooted in our traditions here.
And you have an amazing culinary culture here.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, in every Norman farm, you have 2 main things.
Yeah.
Cows that's still at first, unfortunately, and apples.
Yeah.
And the cows are very important here because we grow them for the milk. And with the milk, we make a lot of good things. I think Normandy is famous for making a good butter. We make also a very good cream, which we use a lot in our cooking, so as for the butter. And we also make excellent cheese. We have 4 AOC of cheese in Normandy. Camembert, the most famous, but we have Pont-l'Évêque, that's 2 kilometers from here. We have Livarot, and we have Neuchâtel. And all these cheeses are very, very tasty cheese, and they match Calvados and cider perfectly. And so, so the cows are used for the milk. And then the farmers a few hundred years ago have discovered something very convenient, that it was very easy to grow apples in the same field where you had cows. And how does this work? Simply, you have to graft the apples and tall standard trees. So you make a tall apple trees so that the branches will be 1 meter and 1.8 meter high. So the cows, they can go under the trees, they can eat the grass there, and it won't damage the production. And it's even a little bit better than that. The cows actually help for the production of apples. All our orchards are organic. We only do 1 treatment at the blossoming, and we like to grow the apples in the most natural way as possible. And well, the cows can help us for that, because they love apple. So in summer, if you watch the cows, they're always the heads up, you know, and they're going around the trees, and they always spend the time around the trees. Why that? It's not for the shadow, because it's not that hot here. But it's because they want to catch the apples. And they're good at that. So they get the branches, they shake the trees, apples fall down. For the producer, this could be a little bit stressful, but not really, because if you go and have a closer look on the fruits, what you see is that the apples that fall have disease. That's all the bad fruits, the rotten apples, those that have a worm inside. So the cows, they get them on the ground, they eat these bad apples, they cut the grass, eventually they fertilize the ground. And then on the 10th of September, we take them away, and we're ready for a good crop. And they have already done a part of the selection job for us.
Awesome.
So it's a very clever system, which was invented many years ago. And so that's something we try to protect and to even develop, because there's a new way now to grow apples. It's with not the tall standard trees, but orchards which look a little bit like a vineyard. So you plant smaller trees. They're planted like 800 trees in 1 hectare, whereas we normally plant 100 trees. And these kind of orchards, well, produce much more, 30 tons per hectare, where we got 8. It requires to be fertilized much more, to be treated much more. But it's more convenient because it gives fruits much faster. 6-7 years to get the first crop. Whereas when you plant a tall standard trees, it's 15 years to wait.
Wow, it's a long time.
It's a long time. After 10 years, you get some fruit, but to have a real crop, you need 15 years.
Wow.
So, you know, you can only do that if you're in a family business. Because no investors is going to play that game. But it's important for the landscape, for the tradition, and I think as well for the quality of the juice. So.
And are all these trees the same kind of apple?
We have more than 30 different varieties planted in our orchards. We also buy apples from other growers, so we use even more than that. There are 120 different varieties authorized in Normandy for Calvados. I think it is actually something very important, because very often when the wine people come and visit us and we show them the orchard, and they look at us and they say, but why do you do that? You have never selected your fruits? Or and you know, I like to think really the other way around. I like to think, well, I'm sorry, but I think we're the clever guys. Because working like that with all these varieties, we have a crop we start picking the fruits from the end of September, but we finish in December.
Because they ripen at different times.
Exactly. We have 2 months and a half to work nicely and smoothly. If you go in Burgundy, within 2 weeks, madness. Everything is done. So you have to be really good and quick. Here we can work gently. That's something very, very interesting. And the other thing is the balance and the complexity of the cider.
Yeah.
I think we're getting more complexity from all these different fruits.
Yeah. Because these aren't like apples.
No.
No.
They are made for cider.
Yeah.
4 categories of cider apples: the bitter sweet, the sweet, and the acid.
Wow.
But the bitter are very bitter,
Mm-hmm.
so you're not gonna eat them for fun,
Mm-hmm.
just to check it's ripe.
Yeah.
And and the acid is a bit similar to culinary apple,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean we really have very specific apples that are
Yeah.
only good for making cider and Calvados, and that's what makes Calvados different.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is very important actually to keep this tradition of growing a lot of different varieties for the style of the Calvados, for its complexity and its balance.
Do you keep the apples, the different varieties, separate after harvest, or do they all get put together?
We like to press different varieties together,
Uh-huh.
so we more or less make the blend already from the orchard.
Yeah.
In autumn, I spend a lot of time going around the apple trees and decide what we pick at what time, and the blends are made at the picking like this, and then
Mhm.
then the different fruits will be pressed together.
Ah, okay.
So we press the fruits, we get an apple juice.
Mhm.
Then we can be very lazy. We just let the apple juice ferment naturally. While yeast, nothing is done. We just wait.
So no commercial yeast.
No. Natural yeast only for the cider, which will be distilled. And the fermentation are pretty slow
Yeah.
because of the climate. So it takes, the fastest will take 1 month to achieve, but you have fermentation which can take more than 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
And
It's a long time.
it's a very long time. Yeah, it's quite unique.
Yeah.
And when the fermentation is done, the cider is about 6% alcohol in average,
Yeah.
and ready to be distilled. So here in the Pays d'Auge region, we need to do a double distillation.
Mhm.
That's part of the appellation.
Yeah.
So we distill the cider, we get Petit Zo at 30% alcohol, then we
Mhm.
distill the Petit Zo, and we get a Calvados at 70%. We cut heads and tails.
Yep.
That is very important. I
Yeah.
like myself to adapt the distillation process to the quality of the ciders,
Yep.
because we distill ciders of different ages.
Okay.
And you don't get the same quality of Calvados with a very fresh cider or with a 1-year-old cider.
That's really unique.
Yeah, it's, the farmers,
It's like pre-aging. It's like pre-maturing.
mainly what happens is the cider evolve if you keep it for some months, and the volatile acidity will develop and the complexity of the cider as well. So if you distill very fresh cider, you tend to make easier Calvados really on the fruit, but maybe with less complexity. If you distill very old cider, you'll get a harder Calvados, higher acidity, but more complexity. And we tend to think that distilling old cider will make Calvados with a better potential for long aging.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our specialty.
Yeah.
We have a very large range of old vintages, so we like to always keep some of the cider not to be distilled too early.
Uh-huh.
And then we adapt the distillation process. If you distill a fresh cider, you don't need to cut as much heads
Yeah.
as if you distill a 1-year-old cider.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Is every year the same in terms of the quality of the apples?
Not really, no.
No.
We have big crops some years, small crops other years. The acidity can change.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say Calvados is not Burgundy, but it's, but we still see differences depending on the years. Yeah.
And you guys have the coolest still. Well, you have a couple of stills, but I love your old portable still. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Well, this was Pierre Pivet still. It's linked to the history of the company. When my grandfather started, it was in the 60s, and he was in Rouen. It's 1 hour from here, and he used to love this part of Normandy and to come for the weekend. So he had this idea of buying a country house,
Mhm.
but he didn't buy a country house. He bought a farm, and the farm was planted of apple trees. And at first, he thought he would sell the apples, but when he made the calculation on the price of picking the apples and what was offered to him, he was very unhappy. So he tried to negotiate the price of the apples, but he was told, Mr. Drouin, there's only one price for apple. If you're not happy, you have to go back home with your fruits, which he did. And my grandfather, he was a very proud person.
Yeah.
and very, how can I say that? Demanding. When he was doing something, it had to be done very well, very carefully. So then he thought, okay, I'm not going to sell these apples for that price. It's ridiculous. So I would better try to make a good Calvados. And we had the chance that there was a very famous mobile distiller in the same village called Pierre Pivet. And he was an encyclopedia of Calvados. He was very knowledgeable. And so my grandfather asked him if he would be okay to help him starting the production. And that was a good deal. And my grandfather said, okay, what I want to do is the best.
Yeah.
So that's where we want to go. And Pivet was very happy with that, of course. And so that's how we started. And then I think my father and I, we were very lucky because for the next 20 years, every year he was distilling, he was putting this Calvados into oak cask, but he never nearly sold any bottle because he couldn't find the time to do that. So he was aging this Calvados into one of the buildings of the farm, and the stocks were getting bigger and bigger every year. He had this great idea not to blend any of these Calvados. And so when my father started, he had a fantastic stock, and he could turn that stock into vintages. And that's is really still something that makes C.Drouin Calvados unique, because we have nowadays more than 35 different vintages available.
How far back do your vintages go?
Well, the oldest we have is from 1939. That's a batch we purchased. It's not our own production. It's fantastic Calvados.
Have you tried it?
Of course, yeah. It's a gorgeous product, and you know, this stock was hidden during the war. I was dug into the ground to be protected from the war. This is how it survived. It's very rare to find any bottles before the Second World War.
What effect did the war have on the Calvados industry? It must have been profound.
Well, the first damage was done not by the German, but by the French government. Because from 1936, the French government needed alcohol to make weapons, gunpowder. So they started to oblige the farmers to sell the Calvados for a very bad price. And they had no choice. Unless your spirit was protected by an appellation d'origine contrôlée. And this is why the Pays d'Auge appellation was created in 1942, just in the middle of the war, to protect the stocks. So, and then the Germans were in Normandy. They drank a lot of it. There's not only bad things about that, because then Germany became a market for Calvados. And then when the American arrived, it was too late for them. All the good stuff was gone already.
Oh, no.
So it's funny because when sometime we met veterans when they come back here for celebrating the liberation, and we asked them about what they remember from Calvados, they say, "Oh, I think I drank something white, very burning and fiery." They don't have good memories of it because it was just the unaged stuff at 70%, and all the good Calvados was already been drunk. Or used for the war. So yeah, the production of the Calvados really started again after the war.
Man, and you can still feel that energy and that connection to that time here. It's a very weird feeling. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Normandy is a very historical region. You know, the apples we used, they were imported from Spain at the 15th century.
Really? And
crossed with the local varieties. And this is when Norman people started to make good cider. And very soon after, distilling this cider to make Calvados. Calvados is in the blood of every Norman people. Every farm here was making its own Calvados. And this is why you had these kind of mobile still, such as Pierre Pivet had. To go, and these people were stopping in every farm for distilling the production of the farmers.
Got it.
And the farmers would drink a lot of white Calvados Blanche, La Blanche. That was the drink for the everyday life. And they would keep some old Calvados for the special event. When they had a good family dinner, then they would go and get some Calvados from the cask.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really something important. And we used to drink Calvados with the food, with the Trou Normand, for instance. Because you know we like eating a lot here. So we have a lot of good food. And so there's a tradition when we make a good family dinner. We have an entry, and then we have a fish course, and then we have a meat course, and then we have cheese, and then we have salad, and then we have dessert.
Yes.
So that's pretty long, you know. and we make big plates.
Yeah.
So usually after the entry, everybody's full already. So our tradition is to drink a glass of a young Calvados, and we drink that before the meat course, and we drink it straight.
Uh-huh.
And we say trou normand, which can be translated by Norman holes, because when you drink that straight, it's very digestive.
Okay.
So you make a hole, you're ready to continue. So Calvados was part of the lunch and the dinner.
Mm-hmm.
It was also part of the work, because the work in the fields was hard. So
Yeah.
you need that to warm you up in winter to go and work outside.
Yeah.
And so it's a very historical product, definitely.
And with the really old Calvados, how do you prevent it from being out of balance with wood?
Well, this is the real challenge. The first thing we do here is we don't use new oak.
Mm-hmm.
All our barrels are second-hand. We buy barrels from different regions. We like to use former port barrels, sherry barrels, Banyuls barrels. We also like to buy barrels from cognac.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to keep our barrels until they die. Because if you want to make a very long aging, you have to respect the fruity character of the Calvados.
Mm-hmm.
New oak is giving a lot of flavors. It's very quick, but it's not very delicate.
Yeah.
And if you do that for too long, for sure you will overtake the apple. So what we like to do is really to age the Calvados gently and to adapt the aging process to what we want to do to every Calvados. The first thing we do is after distillation, we wonder, is this a batch of Blanche which is made to be sold as a young blend, or maybe even as Blanche de Normandy, an aged
What are you
Calvados?
looking for?
If it's just smooth, a lot of fresh apple flavors, then we'll keep it for a young blend or Blanche de Normandy. If we have a higher acidity, a bit more aggressivity, it means, okay, this Calvados deserve a longer aging. It has to be smoothened, and this will happen from the evaporation and the oxidation in the cask. So from that, we select the kind of aging for every batch. And then every year, there's a big job my father and we do, which is very important to us, is we need to taste every cask we have. We do the inventories, as more than 1,100 casks to taste every year. But as the most interesting part, because when you do that, you have to take decisions for every cask. So we take notes, we follow the evolution, and we wonder, what do we do with this one?
Yeah.
Is it made to be blended this year? Or we can think, okay, we're getting a lot of wood here, but the wood is not well integrated. We need to soften these tannins, so we will remove it from that cask and put it into an old cask for smooth oxidation. Or we can think, well, this is nice, but it would be better with a bit more rancio and more complexity, so let's go for a pot cask for that one. And so we take single decisions like these for every cask.
Wow.
And on average, once every 2 or 3 years, we remove the Calvados from a cask to another. So it's a lot of work.
And you have some large casks as well.
We have some bigger casks. We don't use many of them because I think the aging is more efficient in a small cask. But the large casks are mainly used for the blends.
Okay.
When we make the blends, or eventually for some old Calvados with a very good structure already, and we want to go for slowlier aging.
Got it.
But the smaller the cask is, the more contact you have with oak, the more oxidation you have, the more evaporation you have. So the faster your aging and the more efficient, I would say, your aging is going to be.
Yeah.
So choice of the cask is definitely very important. And so how do you make a very good 50 years old Calvados? Well, you take your time.
Yeah.
You don't want to over oak this Calvados quickly. So you, from the beginning, you age it in old Calvados cask. You follow the evolution, and every year you wonder, is this the good cask or not for my Calvados?
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
And how do you approach making a blend?
Well, a blend is a signature. So we have a few blends in the estate. We have Selection, which is a very fresh and fruity blend, which was really produced with the idea of making a good Calvados for cocktails. You have the VSOP, you have the XO. Every blend has a style. More or less, these styles correspond to an age, but I say more or less because this is not accurate. We can change the age from a year to another because what we want really is the same taste. And I take an example. If we make a VSOP, at the VSOP we want to have a ripe apple flavors, baked apples. We want to have the first smooth spices around it, which is vanilla, cinnamon, and we want to have an easy round Calvados. So, and that should be the same every year. So when we make the blend, first we look at the inventories, and when we did that, we have selected some cask that we thought this is good for VSOP. So we take these samples again, and that all goes on a big table. And then I wonder what volume do I have to make. So let's say I have to make 3,000 liters this time. So I will try to, just from the 40 different samples or 50 samples which are on the table, I will try to pick those that are really directly in the style of the VSOP, that are already very similar. And I try to make about my volume from that. So I make a first blend like this. And when this blend is done, then you wanna, then you always have to correct a little bit to be really similar with the former one. So that's when you wonder, okay, I need a bit more rancio, or this is a bit light in structure. So, and then you taste the others, and you're looking for Calvados with more structure or more power, and you bring it to the blend, and you adjust like this cask by cask until you really get the perfect balance. So, well, that's very exciting to do. I love doing that.
So I want to talk about cocktails, but first, last night I tried Calvados in a completely new way, and it completely blew my mind. I had a crepe with Calvados Flambe. So it was a crepe with sugar, and they had a cup with flaming Calvados, and they poured it over, and it was still flaming, and it was incredible. It was so good. I'd never had it that way before, but it's common around here, I guess.
Yeah. Flambe, as we cook a lot with Calvados.
Yeah.
And so we make sauce with Calvados, and with the dessert, we do that with apple pie, with crepe.
Yeah.
We add Calvados, and then we flambe with that, and it brings a nice taste.
Really good. So what are people using Calvados? How are they using it in cocktails?
Well, there are many good ways to use Calvados in cocktails, and it's getting something important now for us. You know, the 25 years ago, my father wrote the first Calvados cocktail book. He
Really?
did that with the help of Jean-Paul Thomine, who was a Norman bartender. And at that time, you know, he thought, okay, Calvados definitely has a good potential in cocktails, but that was 25 years ago. It was maybe a little bit too early, you know. But he thought that was a very interesting topic. And at the same time, he created the recipe of Selection Calvados.
Okay.
And Selection Calvados is a unique Calvados because we produce it with apple and pear, 30% of pear, 70% of apples, more or less, and a column distillation. And why do we do that? Because here in the Pays d'Auge, where we very mainly use apples, and we do a double distillation, we think it takes more time to bring the Calvados to a great balance. But the perfect Calvados for a cocktail should be a lot of fresh fruit, a very direct style, an easy style, and a very much outcoming nose with a lot of fresh flavors.
Yeah.
And you get this with the column distillation, because you get more vertical spirit with the column distillation. And you get this by using pear, because the pear bring acidity and a lot of fruit flavors to the blend.
Got it.
So this Selection Calvados is really made for cocktails, and then there are many good ways to use it. Of course, I love to have sour with Calvados. Calvados sour is excellent. You can twist that with a little bit of Benedictine, which is a liqueur from Normandy as well. So you make a 100% Normand cocktail, and that's excellent. You can twist a lot of classic recipes, and old-fashioned with Calvados is perfect. I like to make it, when I make an old-fashioned with Calvados, I like to make it with 5 cl of Calvados, but then I add 2 cl of apple juice to it.
Okay.
And so it's more like a treacle. I think there's a similar recipe with rum, actually. and then you like an old fashioned, you know, with a brown sugar and a bitter. But that's a very good way to have it. What else? The serendipity as a recipe that Colleen Field at the Ritz Hotel in Paris is promoting for many years now, and I like it because it's a very elegant cocktail. Calvados, apple juice, fresh mint, and champagne, and that is served in a champagne glass. So that's a great one too. But and then the bartenders are very talented to find their own recipes. Yeah. So I'm not sure they actually need my help for that.
And it's so cool to see Calvados specialty bars popping up. What are some of your favorite bars around the world for Calvados?
Well, they are, you know, they in Paris, the trend for cocktails started only quite recently. I would say maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Experimental Cocktail Club was the first one in Paris, and it's still a very good place for us, and they often make good cocktails with Calvados. I like to go to the Sherry Butt in Paris. I like to go to the Castor Club. In Castor Club they have a cocktail which I love. They call it Chirac 95, because you know the President Chirac was elected in 95, and when he was doing his campaign to get elected, he used to say, he had a how do you say in English, a slogan, a sentence.
Yeah.
And that was eat apples. Eating apples, manger des pommes. That was a way to say I'm a simple person. I like natural products and simple things.
That's great.
And so the cocktail is called Chirac 95, and it's a great cocktail. But there is the Le Syndicat, which is a trendy bar in Paris. They only make cocktails with French spirits, and so they do a lot with Calvados and also with Blanche de Normandy. So plenty of good places.
What about outside of France? These Calvados specialty bars?
Well, I think the best bar in the world for Calvados is in Kyoto, in Japan, surprisingly. You have to go that far to get the biggest collection in the world of Calvados. And they have more than 300 different bottles. And they have a lot of very rare Calvados that you can only find in auctions.
Yeah. And
Mr. Takayama, the bartender over there, as a good friend, and he's one of the best specialists I know for Calvados.
Wow.
And you know, like Japanese are, they have a real sense of details.
Yes.
So they go really deep into the product.
Yes.
So that's really a nice place.
Yeah.
In Sweden, you have a few also fantastic places. Opera Kalaren. This is one of the best restaurants in Stockholm, where they have a huge collection of old vintages Calvados, and they made a specialty about it. You have another restaurant in Finland called Noka.
Yeah.
So and in Chicago, a great place that has recently opened is called the Northman, and they made a specialty on cider and apple brandy, and they have a beautiful collection of Calvados too. So there's plenty of places, and more and more, I must say.
And word on the street is you are playing with bees these days. Tell me about your bee project.
Well, bees are very important for the pollination of the trees.
Yeah.
So right now we're just in the middle of the blossoming, and we need to see the bees around. But it's getting more and more difficult, you know, because like everywhere in the Western countries, the bees are declining because of the pesticides or other insects. And I was many years that I was trying to find a bee keeper to help me putting beehives in our orchards. But I couldn't find any, because I always had the same answer. It's very difficult to spread the beehives now. So no, I'm sorry, we won't be able to help you this year. Maybe next year. But it was again the same story the year after. And so then we were talking with my wife at home, and she said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna do it."
There you go.
So that's very funny now. So we have started only 2 years ago, but it's fascinating actually. There is a lot to learn about it. It's probably as hard to make a good honey as to make a good cider, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But very interesting, and I really hope in the long term this will help the pollination of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
It is important to work in a natural way. You know, we also have small. If you go in the orchards, we have small boxes, wooden boxes on the trees, and these are for the birds.
Okay.
Because these birds, they eat insects. So you know that's another good way to avoid using pesticides,
Mm-hmm.
is to use the natural way.
Mm-hmm.
Birds, bees, and the cows.
Yeah.
That's how we like working.
That's awesome. I'm curious about the cider that is used to make Calvados. Is that different than drinking cider?
It is. The cider for distillation is completely dry, so we let it ferment till the end, whereas the cider we bottle will be bottled before the end of the fermentation.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep some sugar left in it. We don't use necessarily exactly the same varieties.
Mm-hmm.
We like to keep the varieties that are the sweetest for the bottling cider, and because for making a good Calvados you don't need a very high degree cider.
Mm-hmm.
I would tend to think it's the contrary.
Yeah.
But for making a good bottled cider you need a bit more degree.
Got it.
So the same varieties can be used for both, but we're still not going to think the blend the same way.
Mm-hmm. And can people come visit Calvados?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have many visitors coming here at Coudray-Rabu every year. We have the chance to be in a very nice farm. This house is from the end of the 16th century, and that's as old this farm is.
This house is older than the United States.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Well, yeah, and I mean it's it's a very traditional farm. We have a nice architecture typical from the Pays d'Auge. The press house over there was built at the 18th century for pressing apples,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been used for that till that. So and there's over there in the back of the distillery there is an old bread oven, because you know people used to live on the farm, and many people, and they had to be you know, they would not go to the bakery like we do nowadays. So
Mhm.
everything had to be produced on the farm.
Yeah.
So every big farm like this had a bread oven. We have just restored it, so it was good fun, and we're making some nice cider bread here again.
Mhm.
That's also another funny project we have.
And it's so close to Paris.
2 hours drive.
Yeah. That's a good old-fashioned field trip.
Yeah, a lot of Parisians have country houses here,
Yeah.
because if you want to go to the sea from Paris, that's the fastest you can do, and the region is beautiful.
Yeah. And the food is spectacular.
Good gastronomy here.
Yeah.
Indeed.
It's kind of a happy place. Calvados, both in spirit and in place.
Yeah, I really like to think that we have very good conditions for living here.
Yeah.
It's very quiet, the architecture is well preserved,
Mm-hmm.
people are easy,
Mm-hmm.
and life is good.
And I saw a rabbit last night.
Plenty.
Yeah.
But if you can catch one, I wouldn't mind.
No? I tried. They're much faster than I was.
Yeah, and they're faster than me too.
Yeah. But I had a belly full of Calvados, so.
Well, you know, we love every animal, but not the rabbit that much, because they eat the apples on the ground, and sometimes they damage the trees.
Oh,
But
no.
they too, they're very clever animals. So we've never been able to get rid of them.
Well, this is my happy place, and I will definitely come back, and I really appreciate your thoughts and your time, and I look forward to many more Calvados-fueled adventures to come.
Well, you're very welcome, Alan.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming here.
To the future.
Thank you.
Yes.